Good afternoon. Welcome to the tea table. I am so happy you've joined me today. I'm sitting on my deck and want to invite you to join me for a cup of tea. If you haven't gotten your tea yet, please push pause and get your cup of tea, and I'll be waiting here for you. Well, today we want to talk about our wonderful American holiday, which is coming up, the 4th of July. And to begin, let's pour out. Now, I have a special teapot today that, though it is not red, white, and blue, it reminds me of what I would think a summer wonderful tea party would be, with all the colors outside. And on my tea tray, I have two very special people. I have George and Martha Washington, and they are little heirloom salt and peppers. But everything else on my tea table or my tea set is modern and reproduction, not vintage English like I usually have. And I want to encourage you, if you do not have a tea set that you're pleased with, you can find these. Now, this is a cup that is so beautiful. Wait, let's put it with the right saucer. Sorry. This one goes with this saucer. And this goes with this saucer, of course. We have the bright blue and the beautiful garden tones. I'm going to take the deeper blue one for my cup today. And let's pour out. Here's a pot. And I bought this pot several years back, very reasonably. I will just tell you where I got these things today to encourage you to go find some. That was from Home Goods. This is a little cream pitcher. I love these. They're just beautiful. And someone did reproduction, British China, at a very affordable price. And these things are lovely. They're available for all of us. And let's try the tea. That is lovely. Earl Grey, Ahmad again, with a touch of Tetley. I somehow just can't get away from that. I'm going to move this tea cup over here for now. Put my teacup down. And then I thought, several people have asked me, well, how do I do a formal tea? Well, it can be formal or informal. But here is one of my little tea trays. This also is reproduction. It's not officially Old English, but on the top, on the bottom, you start generally with the plain little sandwiches or fruit or scones, and then you have the little cakes, or you get a little sweeter up to the next level. And then today I chose the top level is little maroons. These are actually macaroons from Trader Joe's. And these little sweet cakes, which are very darling, remind me of European petit fours. I found those at Trader Joe's in the freezer. So there's no reason to go to a lot of muss and fuss. You don't have to bake everything yourself to have a nice tea party. And it's just presentation. And I love the aqua. I don't know if you can see the colors of this china, but they go so nicely. I love aqua and pink in the summer. It just feels so bright and cheery. The French use a lot of that pink and the, chartreuse green, or the bright blues and greens and pinks are so fun. And so I thought, well, for the 4th of July, and I have behind me, actually, that's not an official flag, that is an apron. And they make so many wonderful things now in a flag theme that I wanted to share that. I thought that goes perfect with a tea party. And for also for my tea table, I brought something. This is, if you can see, this is a very old pot. It is the pot from my mother, the only really silver teapot she had through all the years, and she thought it was from her family. And she was told that it dated back to the American Revolution. Now, I don't know if that's true, and somehow some of the belief was something to do with Paul Revere. Well, there's no way of proving that, but it's a nice thought. And then on this little silver tray, I put I have 2 little salt and pepper sets of Martha and George. They are vintage. Probably, I think they say Mount Vernon on the back. And I've never had the privilege of visiting Mount Vernon. I would love to. But this is a little touch of a teapot that would have been very similar to what they would have used in their parlor. So, let's think about how wonderful it is that we are in a country that was founded upon such a civilized, orderly constitution. And I want to look back just a little bit and think about what we have, because on my table today are my favorite things. A nice little tea party, a silver pot, and what we're going to discuss is really one of my favorite areas of history, and that is called American Rev. When I was at the University of Washington many years ago, I did a lower degree, a Bachelor of Arts in History, and I had an American Rev class. That's what they called it, American Rev. And my professor, interestingly enough, Professor Johnson, was from England. And he was a very good professor, very fascinating. We got to hear a little bit of their side of the story. Understatement. However, he was a very civil gentleman, and he followed the British tradition that the last class with your professor is at his home, having tea. And so we all got to go to his home in the U District, and he poured out and served tea. And it was one of the most lovely tea parties I've ever had. And I know C.S. Lewis often did this with his students at Oxford. It is so wonderful to have good intellectual discussions around a cup of tea. It's the natural thing. Well, for my music today, I have Glenn Gould playing Bach, and I don't know if you can hear it because we're outdoors and it's a little bit muted. I hear the birds. The birds are singing. Lovely. But Bach is very important because, Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach, he dies in 1750. And so his music is everywhere during the American Revolution. And if you study Thomas Jefferson and some of the greatest men of that period, he loved Bach. And Thomas Jefferson actually played the violin. And he, of course, was the writer of the Declaration of Independence. And when he was writing that great work, he felt deeply the importance of that work. And he struggled to write just the right words. And he lived in a house. His landlady was down below, he was up above, and she heard him. Every once in a while, he would pause, and when he got really stuck, his brain got stuck, that brilliant brain of Thomas Jefferson's got stuck, he would take his violin and play, and open up that whole other side of the brain, and write. And Einstein did the same thing. a couple of hundred years later, when Einstein was solving some of his most complex mathematical problems and he would get stuck, he would take out his violin and play. You know, he was an amateur, as was Thomas Jefferson, but I'm sure they were very good players, because it is said Thomas Jefferson actually met with Mozart, but he wasn't crazy about Mozart's music. He liked Bach. He loved the pure Baroque period of music. And he must have been quite good because he was able to play it, and it's not easy to play. So he was not just a fiddler or an improviser, he was actually a student of music. And he also he had a true love story. And his wife, who he loved deeply, he won her heart by playing the violin. She was beautiful and she had many suitors, but she chose him because of the violin. So all through history we have this little musical thread. The violin ends up being very important. My son Samuel, who served several years in the Marines and was in Iraq, he is a violinist and took his violin with him to Iraq, and the commander had him play for the troops, and then he made a CD and they played that over the airwaves to encourage the men, give them boldness. But Samuel has told me a fascinating story that kind of goes with Thomas Jefferson, because Thomas Jefferson, you know, if you remember when he was president, he was dealing with the Barbary pirates out there in the Dardanelles Straits, and they were demanding money to be paid just for the boats to go through, and no other country had stood up against them. And he said, that's enough, we're not taking that in the American way. He said, we will stop it. And so he sent out a general or a commanding officer, and I don't remember his name, and he had the job, you know, the song, from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. Okay, that song has something to do with the march I'm going to tell you about. He had to put together a group of men and march them across the desert, and he couldn't keep order. Suddenly he had brought his violin. He pulled out his violin and started playing, and they marched in order to their place of battle and won the victory. And you know, you've heard of John Paul Jones, that is considered the head of the Navy because he kind of founded the Navy. He really never was an American citizen. He was a Scotsman who loved liberty, and he came to help. He came to help America. And Thomas Jefferson knew he was great. And you know, John Paul Jones is the one who said in the middle of the battle, when everyone thought they were losing, he said, no, we've only just begun to fight. That's John Paul Jones. Well, John Paul Jones was so great that Thomas Jefferson said, I need him. He's got to go in to fight the Barbary pirates in the Dardanelles Straits, which is a terrible area of water all through history. Many tragedies have occurred there. It's a difficult place to get through. And John Paul Jones, the man of duty and courage that he was, went and fought with all his might, soul, and strength. He lived through it, but he had damage done to his body that really he never was able to get over, and he died an early death because of his sacrifice for America. And he's just the beginning of a long line of wonderful people who have stood for our country and for us. We are just the inheritors of this. We are just the ones that are living in freedom and peace and joy. And I must say that, I have many, many, many old vintage history books. And almost all of the really old American history books, when they start talking about the history of America, do you know where they begin? They begin at the Red Sea. I wanted to bring it to you. I will try to find it and bring it to one of my tea talks to show you. The opening page is Miriam playing the timbrel and dancing and singing as Moses leads the children of Israel out of bondage of Egypt into freedom and liberty. And that was the beginning, because that is the beginning. That was like the Declaration of Independence. And then, it is 12 years later that we get the Constitution codification. And my husband always says, Sinai and the giving of the law, it is analogous. It's like that's the Constitution. You have the Declaration, and then you have the Constitution. And the Constitution is your body of writing that tells you why you're free and how you can stay free, and tells you who you are. It's like a will and testament. It's like an identity paper. It's like the greatest thing you could possess, because it tells you that if you're born on American soil, you're free. But this didn't just go back to Moses and the children of Israel and the Bible and the giving of the law. A closer thing would be in the 1200s, which is 1215, when bad King John overstepped his place in England. The Baron stood up and said at the Battle of Runnymede, "That is enough." And that is the foundation of us. It's the Magna Carta. They wrote the Magna Carta. It meant the big chart in Latin. Magna, big, Carta, chart. The big chart that declared that everyone born on British soil was a free man. In other words, the ground was level at the cross, because that concept comes from Christianity. Our freedom and liberty comes from Christianity. It goes right back to the Bible. And then in the 10th century, you had good King Alfred in England. He wrote the Dooms, D-O-O-M-S. It meant the law, the commandments of England. And he was a Christian, just, good King Alfred. He set the table that gave people the idea they could be free. And he based his writings and his thoughts on the Mosaic Code, which was every man in God's eyes is the same, whether you're a pauper or a prince. This is our heritage. These are our gifts. And now America is only 250 years old, but we need to protect our beautiful heritage. And I believe that through doing good to others and having tea parties and spreading the word that God is alive, He loves us, and He wants to take care of us, and we are free because of Him, it turns our heart toward not just God and the Bible, but it turns our hearts to our fathers of faith, the Old Testament patriarchs and prophets, the New Testament disciples and apostles, and then all through church history, the great men and women who have stood for truth and liberty. And really, it all goes back to Jesus, because He took the law and turned it into the law of the heart. That the heart, the person, the individual, turned it into, the whole law got turned into 2 commandments. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, mind, soul, and strength. And love your neighbor as yourself. We are so rich And you know, the last verse of the Old Testament in Malachi, it says, I will turn the hearts of the children to the fathers. And I feel that we need to turn our hearts to our fathers of faith and our founding fathers and honor them. And during the time of the American Revolution, George Washington, around the world, people admired this man. They said, this is the greatest man next after Christ that has ever lived, because his character was so noble. He was humble. He was good. He would spend 1 hour every morning alone with God in his office and 1 hour at night. And no one knew this. He was very quiet. He understood that God had put him in a place to help a nation be formed, so that all of posterity and many, many people could come to these shores and find freedom and creativity and life. We're so rich. And I usually tell you why I'm wearing what I'm wearing, so today I'm wearing white because I think of summer, and this is kind of a gauzy white, and my husband bought me this, and I think it's fun, and it's so practical and so comfortable. It's a little visor hat. And then he also got me this. This was my little summer present from him. And it's a little box purse that matches my hat. And so it has been so fun to have a small purse. I'm getting everything in it, believe it or not. And my jewelry is very special to me. I like turquoise and aqua in the summer. And this is called, my friend really has helped me appreciate what I have. It's called Larimar, and it is only comes from the Virgin Islands. And my son Daniel sent me this necklace and this bracelet many years ago. And then my other son Nat and his sister Victoria gave me this and this, and they all match, so I put them all on. And then this is a little ring from Iraq that Sam gave me years ago. And so they're all meaningful, and I love turquoise. It's just the color of summer to me. And I like silver in the summer and gold in the winter. Well, it has been so wonderful for you to join me. And I want you to take time this 4th of July. Yes, have fun with your family. Enjoy all the fireworks. But take a moment to thank God for men like John Adams, Patrick Henry, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison. The list is too far. It's too many to list. They were willing to sacrifice all for us. Isn't it interesting? It's like biblical Christianity. We have a God who came to this world and gave his life for us so we could live. We live in a country where our founding fathers gave their all. They gave their blood, their sacred honor, their property. They gave their all to fight for freedom. They knew the importance of freedom, going back to the Bible, and really going back to the Protestant Reformation, because that gave the world the Bible. 1517. 1600s, we have people coming to this country on a boat to be free. 1700s, we create a nation. So fast. But like Benjamin Franklin, another one of my favorites, said, when a lady said, "What have you done in there at the Constitutional Congress?" He said, "We've created a nation, lady. Now, if you can keep it." We are a nation of the people, by the people, for the people. It is kept, the nation is kept by God, but through the people. Well, have a wonderful 4th of July. God bless you, and have a tea party for someone. Give joy to someone that needs it. There are people everywhere that need something special in their lives. You be that something special. God bless you. Have a beautiful week. I'll look forward to seeing you next time.